welcome. My name is Jim Stockard. I'm the curator of the Loeb Fellowship here at the Graduate School of Design, and it's my particular pleasure to host the 4th annual awarding of the CurryStone Prize in Social Impact Design. Tonight we have with us the prize winners from across the globe, Taiwan, England, and France. We're honored by your presence at the GSD. We also have Cliff Curry and Delight Stone, the founders of this prize. Thank you for the work you've done to recognize and celebrate this vital aspect of design. I welcome you all here on behalf of the Loeb Fellowship, the GSD's unique mid-career program for practitioners in fields of the built and natural environment. It's a particular pleasure for us to help host this year's event because one of our current fellows, Anna Heringer, is a previous winner of the CurryStone Prize. They are like family for us. I also want to seize the opportunity to welcome you here on behalf of the GSD. It's very appropriate that this award should be handed out tonight in Piper Auditorium. Our Dean, Mohsen Mostafavi, who was a member of this year's CurryStone Design Prize jury, has captured the goals of the education we offer here at the GSD in 4 simple words: design excellence, societal engagement. There is a myth in the popular imagination that these 2 concepts are mutually exclusive. Mohsen believes, and our faculty and student body believe, that is simply not true. Tonight you will see 3 stunning examples of these 2 powerful forces, design excellence and societal engagement, joined together to produce true change in our world. You will notice that our time together is not called an announcement or a ceremony or even a party. It's called a festival. And that's because the organizers of the CurryStone want people to have an opportunity to engage in deeper dialogue with the designers you're about to meet. They do not want this to be a listen to a speech, tell the speaker you enjoyed what he or she said and go home kind of event. In order for these further conversations to happen, we warmly invite you to come to one of 3 concurrent seminars, each of which will be led by one of the prize winners. They will occur tomorrow from 12 o'clock until 2 in the portico rooms at the far end of the gallery out here. Please join us and learn much more about the projects of which you're about to get just a taste. Lots of time for questions and discussion tomorrow. I hope you'll join us. And now to get the evening started more formally, let me introduce Rahul Malhotra, who is the chair of our Urban Planning and Design Department here at the GSD, a former CurryStone jurist, and a designer who's making a social impact with his own work in Mumbai and South Asia. Rahul?
Thanks, Jim, and thank you all for being here. It's a real honor and pleasure that we're hosting this today here at the GSD, this unique prize, the CurryStone Design Prize. It's a unique prize in that it awards social design pioneers, and it's a prize that really brings together design and society, and I think that really is a critical contribution. It was a prize that was created to champion designers as a force for social change. Now in its 4th year, the prize recognizes innovators who address critical issues involving clean air, food, water, shelter, healthcare, energy, education, social justice, or peace. Nominees for the CurryStone Design Prize are selected by an anonymous rotating group of leaders representing broad fields of design as well as advocates of humanitarian sort of aspects. And these are from many, many related disciplines. A jury reviews the nominations to choose 1 grand prize winner and 2 prize winners. Emphasis is placed on emerging practices and projects and ideas that may not have yet been taken to scale. In a sense, the prize serves to facilitate, to act as a facilitator to enhance the potential impact and wider application of the ideas that it recognizes and the power of these ideas that it recognizes and their replication. And it's an amazing prize in that it actually endows over $100,000, which is equivalent to the Pritzker Prize. And so the message is even more powerful because the Pritzker Prize, which is sort of focused on form, here you have a kind of counterpoint, which is sort of putting into play the recognition of social processes and the relevance of design to society. And I think this is a really clear and powerful message of the prize. The CurryStone Prize was founded by Clifford Curry, an architect and recognized pioneer in senior housing, and Delight Stone, a historic archaeologist and social justice activist. They're both here with us tonight, and I thank you for your generosity and the thoughtfulness with which you have instituted such a prize. So why are we here at the GSD? I think Jim was beginning to allude to this. We are hosting this event here because I think we share, and I believe we share, an important goal, that of creating a larger, more meaningful role for designers as change agents, as activists that imagine improved futures, and most importantly, that we are both deeply committed to raising awareness and broadening the purview of designers in society more generally. The prize is a new awards program that was sort of created to recast the discourse, I believe, about design achievements. It shares with the GSD the mission of bringing design issues of social, spatial, and economic justice to the attention of the world. As you know, at the GSD, where there are many new programs that we've been initiating, and the dean and the leadership at the school are finding ways of making more elastic the way that we not only engage with more disciplines, but also stretch the existing paradigms of our models of engagement with society, social change, and transformation globally. Besides the larger rubric of social agency and engagement, which is one of the many larger missions that inform the way we shape our curricula here, these design interests are also played out in our MDes, or Masters of Design Studies tracks that have been evolving here at the GSD. And some recent additions to these tracks have been anticipatory spatial practices, critical and strategic conservation, and art, design, and the public domain. These tracks at their core are all driven by this sort of challenge to designers as they serve as practitioners in society and as educators about the role that we can play more critically in shaping society and improving our environment more generally. I served on the jury of the CurryStone Design Prize 2 years ago and was really impressed with the agenda that the prize had set itself. In fact, I was inspired by the process and, more importantly, the core agenda, its mission and its aspiration. It made me acutely aware that, in fact, the prize was a critique of our disengagement in the academy with regard to placing human beings or people at the center of design and planning questions. I'm glad when I joined the GSD, I was glad when I joined the GSD the following year that I saw the Dean, Moisen, speaking about similar issues and him outlining very similar aspirations in what we were going to do with our own agenda here at the GSD. And so I think this alignment, this sort of neat overlap between the agenda of the prize and what we are trying to do here at the GSD, I think makes this collaboration and this occasion of celebrating it here even more sort of meaningful and important. I must start by acknowledging Hsieh Perlman for making this collaboration possible. She is the curator of the prize and was a Loeb Fellow last year. And while she was here, she started making these connections between the GSD and the prize and our agendas and came up with this idea of trying to host it here. And with Anna Heringer being a Loeb Fellow here this year, I think that added that much more traction and excitement to this process. And so I think the Loeb Fellowship in general, Jim and Sally, we all thank you for bringing such fabulous people to spend time with us here at the GSD. Besides the prize founders, Cliff Curry and Delight Stone and Hsieh Perlman, the curator of the prize, the others who are here with us tonight, and I would like to acknowledge for their role in the CurryStone Design Prize, Emiliano Gandolfi, the secretary to the prize, but also an accomplished practitioner in his own right, who's working with critical projects ranging from social projects in India to work in Europe and more globally. He's an architect and an independent exhibition curator focusing on the theme of the relationship between architecture, art, and urbanism. We also have with us David Mahoney, who was the Dean at the College of Design at the University of Kentucky when the prize was instituted, and he was the founding secretary of the prize and helped articulate and set the direction. So thank you all for supporting this effort to bring the GSD and the prize together and for being here with us tonight. And I'd like to just applaud you for doing this and recognize your contribution. So with that, I think we should move to celebrate the people who are the reason for us gathering here today, and that is to introduce the winners of this prize. There are three winners. There are two winners and a grand prize winner who I will announce last. And so I'll start with the first winner of the CurryStone Design Prize for 2011. And this is Atelier, the architecture de Autogérée, which is a collective of architects from Paris. They're designers and social scientists who transform urban spaces through collaborative, localized endeavors. Founded by architects Constantin, Petcou, and Doina and Petrescu in 2001, AAA has become an engine for engaging citizens in shaping their own cities through building, farming, and artistic intervention. AAA acts as a creative instigator, empowering local communities to carry out and sustain their own ideals for urban regeneration. Both partners in this endeavor studied architecture in their native Romania before pursuing graduate degrees in social sciences in France. Today, they both teach and they're engaged on the ground in practice simultaneously, whether in establishing a community hub in a pass-through between buildings or planting a vegetable garden at the base of high-rise. All their projects share the common goal of promoting urban resilience by empowering citizens to take charge of their environment. What they've been doing is evolving a prototype for sustainable city life on the outskirts of Paris, fortified with the support and knowledge of designers, citizens, and they're on the path towards producing their own food supply and recycling waste, closing the local loops of consumption and production. The multi-year plan includes ecological construction, urban agriculture, a recycling program, and cooperative housing, an example of synthesis that's truly inspiring. Both the process and the final outcomes of these projects serve as models for urban revitalization, which would be relevant from Dakar to Detroit. The profound lessons of the project is how designers can collaborate with residents to create urban regeneration that begins by building communities of citizens who believe in their own power to create change and create sustainable urban ecologies. With that, let's watch this film which covers their work.
Comme moi et Doina, on vient de Roumanie. Ce qu'on a beaucoup appris en Roumanie, c'est dans une période politique totalitaire, c'est l'importance de l'espace d'un point de vue politique.
We wanted, as architects, to enable a bottom-up production in which the residents could be the main actors.
Vous n'avez pas trouvé bizarre de s'investir vous-même dans une friche comme ça?
Ah, au début, c'était difficile parce que moi, je ne voyais pas ce qu'on pouvait faire de bien dans un endroit comme ça, enserré entre de grands murs et tout.
Vraiment une des premières qui existait dans le quartier. Vraiment une des premières, dans le quartier.
L'idée qu'on avait en tête, c'est d'essayer de mettre en place une pratique qui ne voulait pas absolument être alternative, mais qui voulait répondre de manière plus appropriée à des problèmes et des situations qui sont récurrentes de la métropole actuelle.
The architect in the contemporary society, which is a society that has to face a lot of crises, has to question his or her role.
Cet esprit, en fait, on essaie de mettre en place des dynamiques d'appropriation spatiale, dynamiques d'usage de l'espace collectif, public, par des habitants. Et pour essayer de favoriser l'apparition de ce type de dynamique, en fait, on ne peut pas les canaliser, on ne peut pas les pousser. Donc l'idée, c'est de favoriser seulement, de créer les conditions, créer les espaces, les conditions pour que ça puisse apparaître dans ce quartier à La Chapelle où on a commencé.
La Chapelle is the neighborhood where we live in. It's situated between two main rail tracks, and for this reason it's quite isolated from the rest of Paris. It's like an urban island. It's a neighborhood with 30% from an immigrant background, 20% unemployment. So it's clear a neighborhood with lots of social economic problems.
Dans le cas du projet EcoBox, un des éléments clés du projet, c'est l'usage des espaces en friche, des espaces délaissés.
Gardening was the first thing that came to mind, and also it was a very simple, universal activity that can be understood by people across ages, across cultures, those that wanted to have a plot in this salad garden has to build it by themselves or with the help of the others. We added little by little other activities, a collective kitchen, also a media lab producing sound and music.
Cette capacité à se organiser de manière complètement spontanée, donc dans des petits groupes et à proposer des activités que l'on n'a jamais prévues au départ.
Following EcoBox model, we have been invited to build together with inhabitants a project on a space which was a former passageway that was closed and left unused for more than 10 years, and it became a kind of garbage dump.
Ouais.
C'était vraiment un dépotoir. Une friche, les gens jetaient plein de choses par la fenêtre et il y avait des grilles, on regardait pas vraiment par ici, enfin c'était pas très agréable. Pour moi j'habite dans le quartier, c'était vraiment un endroit no man's land.
Mais dans ce collectif d'usagers, dans cette nouvelle association, le 156, il y a un noyau dur qui habite dans une tour de 30 étages. Ce noyau dur, ils ont pris contact avec le bailleur social et ils ont loué ou ils ont acquis en usage le terrain d'en bas de la tour.
The idea of Passage 56 is that we try to produce what we consume. So we needed electricity, compost, water, and we try to have devices that would allow us to produce them. So we have solar panels, a compost toilet, a collector of rainwater, and the space in fact functions with zero cost and just through people involvement.
Petit à petit, il y a un ou deux personnes d'une famille qui viennent et qui s'intéressent à un projet de ce type, mais petit à petit, il y a toute la famille, voire d'autres amis, des voisins qui le font venir. Et petit à petit, ils changent leur mode de vie de manière qui leur convient plus. Et c'est aussi ça qui fait apparaître cette force de continuation du projet, parce qu'en fait, ils veulent continuer un mode de vie qui est plus intéressant, qui est plus sociable, qui est plus collectif, qui est plus lié à la nature et qui donne de la valeur au temps libre.
With urban, it's a strategy that tries to rethink critically the relation between the urban and the rural. We are trying to generate activities for increasing the capacity of the city through housing, economy, food growing, culture, activities that are defining somehow the urban condition. We hope that our experience can provide a model for another type of practice in which the architect is much more aware and much more proactive also in creating responsible environments, more collaborative and more optimistic.
Please welcome Doina Petrescu to accept the award. Constantin Petcou couldn't be here, but he'll be here tomorrow. I believe he had problems with his visa, and so we missed him. So congratulations again. Thank you. The second winner of the CurryStone Design Prize is Ken Banks and FrontlineSMS from London. FrontlineSMS was founded by Ken Banks in 2005 to enable effective communication channels for communities in the developing world. FrontlineSMS leverages the mobile phone and the familiarity of text messaging to turn an offline laptop into a communication hub. The simple innovation empowers villagers, aid agencies, and news services to exchange information among groups extremely easily. For most of the developed world, it's become commonplace to rely on the power of the internet for nearly every aspect of daily life. But in Africa, with less than 10% of the population online, access to vital information and communication is scarce. The mobile phone market, however, has a much greater reach. Nearly half of all Africans have mobile phones, and text messaging has become one of the most common means of communication. The mobile technology, even in the world's most remote and resource-scarce regions, makes it a critical tool for human welfare. Mobile anthropologist Ken Banks recognizes the potential of cell phones, specifically text messaging, to disseminate information, organize aid, and reconnect communities in times of crisis. But individual phones can't broadcast to large groups. So Banks pioneered a method for turning a laptop or desktop computer into an offline hub for two-way text messaging, completely independent of an internet connection. Banks' invention soared into the global spotlight in 2007 when Nigerian citizens used the technology to monitor national elections. Volunteers submitted observations via SMS from local polling stations, preventing voter fraud and gathering foundational data for the country's future democratic process. In the years since, FrontlineSMS has been a powerful engine for a bottom-up social change, from promoting literacy to assisting family farmers in Laos to training rural medics in Ecuador. In 2011, FrontlineSMS partnered with InfoAid, a consortium of international media organizations working to improve the communication channels between aid agencies and disaster-affected communities to assist in the distribution of news and information to northern Kenyans. Banks has emerged as a leader in the growing field of technology in the public interest by deploying the simplest of modern-day tools to empower millions of poor and marginalized people on the planet. With that, let's look at the film and his work.
I spent quite a bit of time in South Africa and Mozambique looking at how mobile technologies could be useful. I think there's a tendency when we look at innovation today that we think immediately of iPads and smartphones. The important thing is to lead with the problem, lead with the people, and the answer may be a crayon at the end of the day. I was meeting lots of non-profits working in rural areas who were also very interested in figuring out how they could use phones. But people weren't building tools that to me seemed to particularly work very well in those places. When I set out to solve the communication problems that I saw in South Africa, that's really all I was trying to do. Just really sticking to the root thing that we were trying to solve. It's sending a text message to somebody and getting a reply back. I don't know specifically where the idea came from. It really did just appear, and I scribbled some notes down. Most of the things I was interested in were the problems. It was conservation or human rights or agriculture or climate change. All this stuff bugs me. You can't do all those things, but I've somehow managed to create a piece of software that allows me to contribute to all the things that concern me, all in one go. FrontlineSMS turns a low-cost laptop computer and a mobile phone and a cable into a two-way text messaging system, which allows non-profits working in developing worlds to run automated text messaging services with rural communities. And you can use it with very, very little computer skills or experience. For healthcare workers, farmers, human rights activists, election monitors, whoever you're trying to communicate with, type a message and send it to all of those people.
SMS is, in a sense, quite an old technology. It's been around for a long time and hence it's so accessible. The fact is there's 5 billion mobile phones in the world today and that's a very accessible technology, whereas the internet isn't so accessible.
I think before Ken, there was always either or. Use a laptop or use a mobile phone. Being a country that is 25 million people on mobile phones, so you can't really avoid that platform. But secondly, yes, you have a mobile phone, but you need something that can harness the power of that phone.
When I released the software in 2005, we had our first user in Zimbabwe after about a week, and I was very excited to have one user. Suddenly in April 2007, a loose coalition of Nigerian NGOs took the software and helped monitor their national elections, and it was the first time it's believed that African NGOs have monitored their own elections using mobile technology. I think suddenly the idea that everyday citizens could actually report things changed the way people thought about how they might go about trying to swing an election. And I think that's had a wider impact in all around the world. I think people that put their necks on the line for that type of work, the least I can do is do my best to support them. I'm not on the front line of this. They are.
Harassmap was really concerned with the level of harassment on Egyptian streets, so they created an SMS service using FrontlineSMS to allow people to send reports when they experienced harassment. They also used an online crowdsourced mapping tool so that they could then respond to the areas where harassment was most prevalent.
One of the key things with FrontlineSMS is, as an organisation, we don't deploy the software ourselves in developing countries. We make it available to existing non-profits and grassroots organisations. If we hadn't open sourced it, we would not have had this rich ecosystem of developers. People working in certain sectors have identified some additional functionality that can be added to the software, which makes it more useful and more relevant. FrontlineSMS Medic are building patient record-keeping systems that are powered by text message. FrontlineSMS Credits are building microfinance modules, and the newest one coming out later in the year, FrontlineSMS Media, will allow us to build citizen journalism, data collection, news story tools to report things that are happening where they are.
When you get a group that has been oppressed, that has been so dispossessed, and all of a sudden they find something that renews that hope, for me that becomes a really inspiring moment, and that is where change happens.
The logo for FrontlineSMS here on this badge is \o/. It's a text representation of somebody who would feel empowered, which is the message that the software seems to give. It's textable because it uses standard characters available on the keyboards, and also we get photographs from users in the field actually sending in workshops and their staff feeling, yes, we've got our system running and we're empowered. So we see our role very much as building tools and allowing the people who actually own the problem to solve it.
And finally, the grand prize winner of the CurryStone Award for 2011 is Hsieh Ying-Chun from Sun Moon Lake, Taiwan. Hsieh is a leading Taiwanese architect who for over a decade has deployed his talents in rural areas that have been decimated by natural disasters. In many disaster scenarios, the technical and financial burden of reconstruction renders the affected communities powerless, dependent on NGOs to deploy basic aid. But thanks to social design pioneer Hsieh, this is now transforming into a model of self-reliance and community empowerment in the places he works in. A native of Taiwan, Hsieh ran a conventional architectural practice from 1984 until 1999. When the quake decimated the countryside, he moved his firm out of the city to the affected site in Sun Moon Lake and took a leading role in redefining rural design and construction with community engagement as a guiding principle. It is where his studio with about 20 dedicated staff is based today. Hsieh establishes a cooperative network of designers, local contractors, and residents that supports and sustains local needs. His simple design ensures that every villager, from the youngest child to the eldest grandparent, can have a hand in building their own homes. In the years since his first humanitarian efforts, Hsieh has demonstrated the scalability and adaptability of his designs in other parts of Asia. In 2008, he was called to central China, where nearly 70,000 people had been killed by the Sichuan earthquake and the majority of buildings destroyed. He worked with villagers to construct 500 homes, as well as compositing toilets, which address issues of sanitation and health while producing usable fertilizer for the community. Today, Hsieh continues to travel where rural communities need him most, providing guidance and organizing cooperative teams that can function and thrive after his departure. He demonstrates how through design, devastated communities can be healed both socially, spiritually, and physically. With that, we should look at the work that he has done through this next film.
好啊，会看你哈，你迄有啦吼。头家，一个朋友来给你关心嘛。现在是少族的祖灵祭哈，那他们大过年哈，大概过15天左右到20天，那他要搭这个祖灵屋，那搭祖灵屋是邀请他的祖先回来。 在这边呢，他们会唱歌跳舞。地震以后，这些房子当然是提供一些临时的安置。这是在1999年台湾的921地震以后，那我是受一些人类学者的要求到这边来协助主要就是说，它族群非常少，但是它保持了非常完整的他们的南岛语族的祭典仪式。那也就是因为这个样子，那我就踩到这个领域里头来，就是所谓的原住民的或少数民族的部落的重建，或者是灾后重建的这个工作。当然是这个预算是非常少的，只是那时候一般盖房子大概差不多。 20%左右，一般盖房子20%的费用而已。因为我们是希望动员当地的人来做这件重建的工作，而不是外面的人在做这件事情。所以盖房子本身也是让他们族群重新凝聚的一个目的，就是他们能够一起合作。 所以这房子看起来很简陋，但是最重要的是他们自己参与，自己建立自己的家园。除了钢料还有一些水泥是外购以外，其他都是就地取材。 还有那个窗子都是那个质量很差的栈板。这个房子是我们在这个社区里头，它的预算最少的，那但是是做的最好、最完整的。那这个30万呢，买这些材料绰绰有余了，无非就是他的用心跟他的劳动力的投入。这个灾区的一个概念很重要的就是，你不能提供给灾民一个房子，而是给他一个可能性，因为一个房子是一辈子或者好几辈子的积累。
像我们这个是整个村庄一个50几户这样子被种了，这个是中居屋。我们当然是希望还是回到原来的故乡这样子。对对对，就学会这些钢骨结构这样子。
对他们来讲，最好的疗愈就是劳动。那盖房子需要很大的劳动力，也需要合作。在这个过程当中，就可以让他们忘掉那个灾难的那个苦难。一个很重要的观念就是说，我这房子的结构是很简单的，它可以修改。它是做高架的房子，但他们这个就自己慢慢在做了，花了10年时间慢慢做起来。看一下这个木头好了。在我学习这个过程当中，跟大家都是一样的，但是我觉得里边有太多的疑问在里边。但是因为我认为的豪华的价值观念是不太一样的哦。This is a next generation toilet。你把它混在一起就天下大乱，就是尿粪分离。我们下面是一桶一桶哈，装满了以后我们就移到旁边去，再换另外一桶，那绕一圈以后就变干了。我过去是从事那个半导体工厂的设计，那个是我们现在的工业生产的是非常高端的、高科技的一个领域。但是当我地震以后来这边从事这个工作以后，我觉得这个事情呢更重要，并不是赚很多的钱，或者是做很多高科技的东西，或者是挑战你的技术的极限，那跟人都没有直接关系，但是这是跟人息息相关的，直接我们可以看得到它的对他们的影响，对我们这个价值。这个对这个人的价值的重新认识。
Please welcome Hsieh Ying-Chun to accept the grand prize. Before we move on to a discussion with the winners and questions from the audience, I'd like to just sort of thank, on behalf of the CurryStone Prize, Ramsey Fendel for the films and for putting all this material together that sort of brings this good work to us in such sort of real ways. So thank you, Ramsey, for doing this. I'd also like to welcome to this evening's presentation last year's grand prize winner. I didn't realize she was here, Elizabeth Scarf, who is right there in the audience, so welcome. And with that, I think we should move to the table and begin our discussion around the questions and issues you've raised in your projects. So the way we'll format this is we'll start in the order of the presentations we just saw. Maybe brief presentations from each of the winners, 3 to 5 minutes. Perhaps you could just sort of highlight aspects that you think the films or my introduction to your work hasn't sort of touched upon, and from that we'll, I think, set up a conversation and then open it up to questions from the audience. So, Doina, would you start then?
Thanks a lot, and I have to say that it's a huge honor to represent here Atelier d'Architecture Autogérée. The translation would be in English, Studio of Self-Managed Architecture, and I think that this is very important. It's the idea of an architecture that is self-managed by its users. Somehow, we have started, Constantin, Petcou, and myself as founder of this practice with this concern of setting up tools and spaces for bottom-up production of space, a production that will involve the users, and a production which will be more democratic, and this is in a context of living in a metropolis, in a big city, in which space and let's say affordable space, it's rare, and we had this idea of using leftover space as a driver for this kind of reclaiming and reinvention of collective space. I'll just show you a few images. One is this, which is about the social space, the socially deprived space in a big city like Paris. You can see what is called in red areas, zones urbaines sensibles, areas of sensitive socialness, which are somehow the areas where there are social problems and economic problems, and all our projects are set up in these areas, and these are the areas also in which we live, like in La Chapelle, as you have seen in the film, where there are lots of immigrants, unemployed people, and urban leftovers, and these were somehow we tried to transform this in a kind of potential. So we mapped the urban wasteland as available space, the organization, the public institution, but also the individual as available people, as potential, social potential. We overlap them, and we also, starting with nothing, identified urban trash as material, as possible material for an architectural project. And we have started to reclaim space and finally managed to find space for temporary use, like this Warren House, with the idea of initiating self-built gardens with using pallets as material, and knowing that these gardens will be there only for a limited time. And this is very important because they become mobile gardens with the possibility of not only leaving the space, not only with a reversible use, but also the possibility of reinstall the garden in another place and use this as a kind of instrument to claim even more space in the city. And we have added other activities and also a pile of pallets that was not used, but kept the kind of architecture to follow the activities that were emerging. So we had a number of mobile modules, a media lab, a kitchen, that together with space and with people created multiple agencies, cultural agencies, social agencies. And this is somehow the representation of our project. A plan and a section won't represent our architecture. This is a much more accurate way of speaking about processes and relations. And little by little, the space became self-managed by the users, and they started to propose activities that they wanted, that they needed, like these ones. But also, we kept organizing activities in which a critical knowledge production was happening. This was a discussion about leftover space in the area, you know, asking political questions. And this is how the space evolved. In 2005, we had to leave, and this was a critical moment. We had to dismantle the garden, and we reinstalled it. We were able to reinstall it on another location. And this is the moment when we left the project and left the user to manage it completely. And in 2008, again, they had to leave the project. And what was very important is that they managed to claim. They learned everything about the tactics of reoccupying space. So they reinstalled the garden in their way on another location that they managed to claim at the city hall. And now the garden is continuing to be there and is completely self-managed. And this is what is very important, and this is what is my statement in addition to the film, is the fact that what looks like a very simple and small device as a dismountable garden with some mobile modules attached to becomes a strategy when it's multiplied. So these are the different occupations as well as other gardens that arose in the area following the same model. So somehow it's a kind of dispersion by proximity and transmission of not only a physical device, but also the whole knowledge and of building it and of using it together with it, like a rhizome. And I think this is very important, how to pass from a small scale to a bigger scale by thinking a strategy behind this.
Thank you very much. Ken?
So I think first of all, a big thanks to the organisers and to Harvard for welcoming somebody from Cambridge in the UK to come and see how the great pretender is trying to match up with the original and still the best Cambridge, I must say. But it's quite nice here. I think for me, I feel incredibly lucky to have found something which I every morning wake up and get really excited and motivated by. And that's because we've created something which allows people to really reach their own potential through a very, very simple tool. And I think there's quite a few lessons in that we can learn, and certainly lessons that we're constantly reminding ourselves in the work that we do. And in the seminar tomorrow, we're going to go into a lot more detail about the uses and where it's being used and how it's being used. And I think how the approach that we have in particular is working, because clearly in our view, we've struck on something which other people haven't quite managed to do quite so well. My background's quite a mixture of things. I've always believed if the ideal job doesn't exist, and you have to create it. And it's taken me 18 years to create mine. If you try to do it yourself, I'd recommend maybe doing it slightly quicker. It's taken me a bit longer than I planned. But my background's a mixture of things which certainly to some seem unrelated, but they actually do blend in very, very well. I've been doing IT in various sectors, starting out in the finance sector in Jersey, Channel Islands, where I was born, not Jersey on the East Coast. But again, the original Jersey. You guys keep stealing our names. It makes my life very difficult. So I've been doing IT for about 25 years and really wanted to try and apply it in more interesting and useful ways than just running bank finance systems. In 1993, I had a trip to Africa, to Zambia, to help build a school. And that was sort of a turning point for me, where I left a fairly affluent island where people didn't really want for very much, and realized actually that life for many people sucks. For the majority of the planet, actually, life sucks. And it seemed a little bit wrong to be living this comfortable little existence when many people really, purely out of just bad luck, being born in a different country, really had so few opportunities. I went to Africa a couple more times, did some conservation projects and development projects. So over the last 18 years, I've spent time in Zimbabwe and ran a primate sanctuary in Nigeria and done environmental survey work in Uganda, research in Zimbabwe, worked in Kenya, South Africa, Mozambique, really just going almost everywhere that would have me to try and understand what problems people faced and to try and understand how people on the ground who are trying to solve those problems were doing that and where the gaps were. My degree is social anthropology, which is where the anthropology comes in. And when I took anthropology, I didn't really realize how useful it was going to be. It kind of looks like a masterstroke now. When you think about the huge focus that increasingly technology projects are putting on the people and understanding the problems and understanding the contexts and the culture of the people that you're trying to help, anthropology does it incredibly well. And anthropologists are finding their way into more and more corporate environments because it's just very, very good at answering those questions. So it's really formed the cornerstone for me to reinforce the thing that I think, as the video showed, it's really about the people and about the problem, and the technology does really come at the end. And the answer may be a crayon. I think as a mobile technologist, if I always go in hoping the answer will be a mobile phone, I'll find an answer that's a mobile phone, but it might not work. Right? So I think we have to be very, very open about that. Since 2003, I've been working exclusively with mobile technology. Very, very fortunate to get into sort of mobile in Africa when it really, really started off. And was, again, lucky, really, to come up with a solution to a problem which I'd experienced. No one really knows where ideas come from. I was drinking beer at the time, and I think that might have helped. So maybe if you want to try and come up with some ideas, have a couple of beers. But I think it's all about execution. Ideas are cheap. I was chatting this morning to Clifford about these things. And, everybody has ideas. Twitter is a great idea, and many people probably thought about doing Twitter long before Twitter was launched, but nobody actually did do it. And I think that's the difference. It's about executing the ideas that you have. But for me, it was also about thinking about a different way of doing development. A white guy from Jersey in the Channel Islands really has no right going to a village in Zambia or Kenya or Mozambique and telling people how to solve their problems. I know nothing about health or agriculture or microfinance. I could learn bits, I suppose. So, why should I fly around the world imposing my own ideas on people when I don't really know what I'm talking about? And development's kind of done that, right? Development's been all about consultants and people from afar flying in and trying to solve problems they really have no right to solve. Why not build tools to let the people who own the problem to solve the problem themselves? And that just feels very, very right to me. And I think FrontlineSMS actually proves that if you trust your users and you build the right tools, then actually you can have quite a big impact. I've only been to one FrontlineSMS installation out of all the 80 countries. I've only ever been to one. And when National Geographic gave us an award last year, I was asked for pictures of me in the field, with users and doing training and holding phones. And I said I don't have any. And they were pretty shocked. And that's the beauty. The beauty is I didn't have to go and do the work. It's all done by the end user. So I think it's a little taste from what we'll talk about tomorrow. But for me, it's really been a very, very interesting journey of just combining all the things that I love and all my passions, and the fact that there are so many problems out there that there's no chance on earth I would ever get to solve really many of them at all. But to come out with something which actually can be applied in so many different ways has been hugely exciting. And I think it's just the beginning. I think we're learning a lot more about how design and anthropology and human-centered approaches can really make a difference. And I think that mobile technology is certainly going to be one of the main avenues for a lot of this development in the coming years.
Hsieh, and Jenny has kindly agreed to translate, so you'll speak through a translator.
大家可能不知道哈，可能没有这个意识。全世界大部分人类的居所，跟我们这个专业是无关的。我明天讲的题目，其中讲的就是有70%的人类的居所的问题。
Most people probably don't realize the habitation, the way how people live, really has nothing to do. Us as professionals, we really haven't tapped into this problem, and this is one of the main topics that we will talk about in the seminars tomorrow.
如果有经验的建筑师哈，你走到灾区的时候，你会发现，你完全没有办法。
As experienced architect, any experienced architect, once you encounter the disaster site, you realize that you feel very helpless, and there's very little you could do.
因为我们的训练，我们的观念，就是没有办法让我们去碰触到那个70%人类的居所。
Because through our training, we realize it's hard to deal with the 70% of the dwelling issues in the world.
所以我们在灾区的工作是从最基础的，比如说居民的组织开始做起。
So our work in the disaster reconstruction starts with the most basic work, which is the forming of the community.
甚至于从材料的生产到施工组织，到当然设计也是要重新用新的观念去做。
From the production of the material and the construction, and of course, to the design of the reconstruction.
所以明天我要讲的就是关于这个部分的操作的经验。
Tomorrow, during the seminar, we will expand on this operating process.
还有方法。
And methods.
希望这个我们的经验呢，能够为专业者进入到这个领域提供一点分享，同时大家可以一起讨论。
And we hope our experience can act and serve as a reference for the professionals, and also to bring out discussions.
所以在这边我要非常感谢CurryStone 的基金会，除了看到我们这个是所谓的大家认为的人道主义的一个建筑以外，还有很多的专业技术的作为。
So thank CurryStone Foundation not only see our efforts in humanitarian design, but also recognize its professional value.
谢谢。
Thank you.
So just to sort of start the conversation, Doina, I mean, I'm so happy you actually showed us those images and the way you've represented those rather complex ecologies that you work with and that you recognize, discern, map. But what struck me was, and I mean, I think this is, we aspire to make stable ecologies, but these ecologies are inherently unstable and mobile, as you used and you showed us with the garden, etc. And this is partly a comment, but partly, I mean, I think either one of you could pick up on. It struck me that the technologies that you're using and the work that she's sort of engaged with in many ways have some incredible intersections, and especially because of the inherent instability of the kinds of ecologies that you're working with, trying to intervene in. I think technologies like this could potentially play an incredible role. I was just wondering if in listening to each other's presentations or otherwise, you might have something to say about that.
I don't mind. No, I think you're right. It was fascinating watching the film and actually seeing how you're creating environments where communities can come together and they see value in coming together. And I think we do that in a digital way. You know, many of the communities that use our software are already communities, but they need to be enabled. There's inefficiencies, or people lack a voice, or they feel disempowered and they feel that they can't contribute in some way. And we do it through mobile phones, and I think you do it in a more physical way. You do it by actually bringing people physically together. So I think, you know, we're sort of a 21st century version of that. But, you know, bringing people together as a physical community is hugely important. And all of the work that I do, FrontlineSMS is just sort of one example, but all of the work that I do and everything that I think about and everything that I aspire to is to figure out how we can empower communities and empower people. I think in today's financial climate and the way the world seems to be going, people are increasingly vulnerable to things that they have no control over. And I think that's pretty horrible. I think we should be trying to reclaim some of our future and some of our potential. And I think the work that you do gives people that hope. And it's very tangible, it's hugely tangible, in fact.
And I think these approaches are complementary, and they are speaking about two different scales that are both important. I think this scale of proximity that somehow it's the scale in which people are operating by physical presence is absolutely crucial and important. In our case, we realized that a lot of things wouldn't have happened without having people doing things and learning and seeing each other doing. I think technology will add probably another dimension and another scale to such a practice, but they are certainly not exclusive. Yeah, so they are complementary.
In fact, they'll probably help connect each other. And I think I'm struck by this sort of idea of the intimacy of scale, but I was also struck about the use of alternate practice as not being something that was necessarily what you were proposing. But it is yet a paradigm shift. It's another way of architects or designers engaging in the environment. And your training, your base training is in architecture. Just curious, what motivated you when you finished your education to embark on an engagement like this?
Well, together with Constantin, we were motivated by this need of doing architecture differently, and also of sharing somehow our knowledge and our profession more directly with those that are benefiting of it. It was that's why we have started also in the area in which we were living, because we have started on a double position of architects and citizen. We were professional and neighbors, and I think we learn a lot about having these different hats and sharing the kind of approach was easier because we were having this double position. So yeah, so we definitely wanted to do architecture in a more democratic way.
And how did you make the economics of this work? I mean, is this something that's set up as a not-for-profit? Is it reliant? I mean, that transition for young people is always a critical step.
No, I think I would invite the people that are interested in this to come tomorrow to the seminar, because we will show a lot of diagrams about the economy of the practice and the economy of the different projects that we have done, because these are very important. We are valuing a lot the voluntary work also as part of the economy, and I think, but also the kind of other inputs that we are considering, not necessarily monetary, yes. as part of the economy. Yeah, so we started with a lot of voluntary work, and little by little we obtain funding with a kind of political concern of not having just one source of funding. So kind of putting bits together, pots together. And also we managed to have 2 subsidized posts, which are somehow recognized by the kind of local authority as an important support for such practice. And this makes the practice sustainable.
So Hsieh, in the same way as this is a critique really on business as usual practice, I think the work that you're doing, I mean, for me, that clip from the film which it ends on, which is why I said it's also about spiritual healing, is very touching and moving, because this is not only about post-disaster reconstruction, but it's also a critique of how housing and how communities are built without making it human or people-centric. And you have, in this sort of adverse condition, used that to your advantage to, and I think perhaps regular practice has a lot to learn from it. So could you tell us how you might reflect on that and what you think the profession could sort of gain?
住房是一个非常细腻的事情，很难交给别人来做。
Like dwelling is a very sensitive topic, and it's quite personal. It's very difficult to hand over to the other person.
除非你非常非常有钱，你才可以找到designer帮你处理这些事情。
And if you're really wealthy, then you can find designer to cater all your wishes.
但是对大部分的人民来讲，只有他自己最了解他自己的生活。
For most people, only themselves understand or know what they need.
所以一定要回到居民本身，他一定要参与其事。
So it all goes back to the resident and the dweller has to participate during this process.
你完全不知道他们的信仰，甚至于他们的习惯，怎么有可能透过别人的手帮他做？
If the designer doesn't know about their belief and then their habits, how can they build something for them?
所以在没有商品化的一个状态之下，像譬如说灾区或者是比较贫穷的地区的重建，它必须回到它的人的本身。
For work like places in disaster zone and also rural area when there is no product consumption, it has to return to the people.
不只是实质上的建房，包括他心理上的认同。
Not only including the actual construction of the houses, but also to the spiritual needs for the people. Does that answer your question?
Well, we can, yes. I mean, there's more we'll have an opportunity to say. But I want to just sort of open it up to the audience because I'm sure there'd be lots of questions. So Andreas is right here.
So I'm Andreas Slepik, one of the current Loeb Fellows, and I have a question to Doina. As you show us how you empower the community to become like self-sufficient with these projects, is then the end of the architect in sight? Because like as much as we are in a school for architects now, so what is like the lesson for the younger generation now? If you give like this lesson that the people can do their architecture themselves.
I don't think this was the message. The message was that the architect should play another role, which is not necessarily that of a builder, but or a kind of designer of buildings, but that of designer of processes, of that of enabler, of sometimes initiator, as it was our case, but not always, networker, and maintainer. So I think this is rather the message. And I think that this role is still very important. And we need training. We need to learn how to do it.
If I can, I think just following Andres' question, and congratulations, by the way, I was very inspired by all of your practices, and by the way the films are fantastic and the way that they compress the essence of such complexity. But I think being in the design school, I think we must also open up this sort of rethinking of the role of the architect. And I was very taken by Ken's sort of anecdote of, taking 18 years to find the job that you wanted to execute. And reminds me that something that is at stake here is this issue of how do we design also our own practices. I mean, how do we reposition ourselves in the context of this crisis or many of these issues that have become so compelling. But it requires really the rethinking of almost expanding our modes of operating. And I think that in itself sometimes tends to be forgotten, that to address a problem means to rethink methodologies. And somehow, of course, many of you doing, many of us engage in this, is really about becoming interlocutors and sort of mediators across these issues. But that brings up a kind of, it's not necessarily a question, but maybe I didn't want it to really, I wanted to amplify what you said, Doina, and I think in the context of Andres' question is that while you may be interested in the designing of things, there is something about your work, at least, that has been inspirational, is that you are also engaged in the designing of protocols within which those things become meaningful, within which those things are deployed, distributed, within which those things respond to a kind of design of governance, transferability of knowledge. And because they teach us in the schools to design beautiful spaces, but we never ask ourselves, how do these spaces will be managed in the long term? How will they be sustainable? And I think that's equally a task of design. And I'm thinking that that's one of the most powerful things about your work, is issues of transferability, so that you can live as an architect and other things will be produced, other economies will emerge. So I just wanted to say that, because that's equally a task of design. Thank you.
This was not a question. Thanks.
Well, I could maybe just add to that, actually. What's interesting, when CurryStone contacted us about the prize, I kind of thought, design prize, software, mobile phones. It wasn't an immediate fit, and it almost followed, for me, the moment last year when National Geographic called us up and said that I was now an emerging explorer, and I was thinking, well, I haven't climbed anything recently, and I don't dive, and I don't sort of go rummaging around in jungles. But if you think about exploration and think about the technology that is now dominating our lives, figuring out how you use that is actually a form of exploration. And it got me thinking very differently about how we think about the work that we do. And again, with the CurryStone Prize, I think we'd never really thought about ourselves as designing, but I think if you create these ecosystems and you trust your users and you put people at the center and you're very, very open with what you do, then interesting things do happen. So it's actually challenging the way that I think about our work. It's not maybe just challenging the way that maybe designers think about what design means. All of these things actually challenge me as well. So I think it's a fascinating time, it really is. It's a question.
Hi, this question is for Hsieh. What is the engagement of the beginning of a building process for your firm now, especially as opposed to your firm years ago when it was more conventional firm? Do you submit a bid or qualifications, or do governments contact you after a disaster? How does that work?
灾区的项目，除了去年的台湾的项目，那个世界展望会委托我们做了将近1000户以外，过去的项目其实，严格来讲，并不是真正的委托项目。
For the disaster project, 88 flooding reconstruction in Taiwan that was commissioned by World Vision, an NGO, to commission us to do 1,000 housing units. Other disaster project wasn't exactly commissioned through government or any NGO organization. It was a lot of the project were more self-initiative within the community.
大部分都是各种特殊状况之下找到我们来协助的，或者甚至于是我们自己主动去找到的这个项目。
Most of the time was under very special conditions. That how people find us and how, for example, for the Sichuan earthquake, we entered into the village the first week after the earthquake happened.
I might just sort of ask one question, which you maybe all would respond, which picks up on this one, which is actually in many ways all your projects. For me, one of the consistent factors is that you're complementing government efforts, so sometimes where they don't exist at all. So in a sense, it sometimes could be seen as challenging the government, sometimes it's a critique of the government, sometimes it's complementing the government. And so, and in very different situations. So if you might each sort of briefly just tell us about your experiences or how those reactions pan out, that might be interesting.
我们的做法比较特别哈，所以政府要能够理解我们做的东西是很困难的。
Operating method is quite different from the past, so it's hard for government to understand what we do.
所以我们10几年来做的项目，只有去年西藏政府找我们做了一个小的村子。
For all the projects that we have done in the past 10 years, there was only one project that was commissioned through the government. That was a herdsman resettlement in Tibet.
所以基本上来讲，都是直接跟村民的接触，由这个组织开始。但是村民的组织对政府来讲会构成很大的威胁。
The most projects were commissioned through the communities of the villagers, but these organization communities most of the time becomes a threat to the government.
所以说，要突破这个障碍，能够跟政府合作是我们最大的目标，但是那个要时间。
So it is our goal how we can break through this barrier between us and the government, and I think this is still an ongoing goal for us.
Yeah, in our case, we didn't work with the government, but we kind of engaged with local municipality of La Chapelle, and we were in conflict with it in the beginning because they couldn't understand this kind of temporary use and being used with squatters and with always a conflictual situation with people that are occupying space temporary. And finally we demonstrated that we are ready to move, but not without conditions. So we kind of used this weakness as a strength, and we negotiated, instead of one big space, 3 small spaces, and instead of these 3 small spaces, other spaces, and so on. So it was a tactic to kind of multiply occupation at the end, even if it's temporary. And in other projects, we were invited by local municipalities to work with them, but we have always conditioned this partnership. So we were the coordinators, and I think this was a quite, I think, good situation, because we were not service makers. We were coordinator and engaging from a different position with a municipality which was not a power position. And I think we like this because I think the municipalities, as Hsieh said, need to learn and to be challenged also to change their practice. And I think by doing these partnerships with all the problems that are coming through, allows, I think, a mutual emancipation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting for me actually that a tool that was designed for small grassroots non-profits in rural areas to actually be being used by governments was never quite what I had in mind. We've actually got some quite interesting relationships with governments depending on which side of the sort of democracy fence they sit on. I think a good example would be, say, in Aceh, the government there are using FrontlineSMS as part of a nationwide fish price market system for fishermen to provide them information about fish prices and allow them to sell their fish and so on. So that's a positive use. On the flip side, in Belarus, the government shut down some local NGOs shut down the mobile phone numbers of local NGOs using the software to monitor the elections because they were worried it was going to highlight things that they may not have wanted to be highlighted. I think if you want examples of how disruptive social media and mobile technology can be, just look at North Africa and to see how many leaders tried to push it down and control it and actually failed. And in some cases, ended up dead because of it. So, whether you actually want this technology or not, it's there. It's probably foolish to try and control it, but certainly some governments are. But I think, again, for us, the use is kind of agnostic. We don't get too involved in that. I think, obviously, we'd like it to be used for more positive things than negative things. But at the end of the day, I think that will be the case. But yeah, I mean, we have government users, although they were never really intended to be our target.
No, and I think this is really an interesting question and a fundamental one in, I think, all the work that we are celebrating here and I think what the prize is doing, because eventually I think it's these interfaces and these partnerships that will make these technologies even that much more relevant and go that far. And so with that, I want to close this evening's celebrations and once again want to thank the prize founders, Cliff Curry and Delight Stone, Emiliano, who was the secretary of the award, and Hsieh, the curator, who was responsible for bringing it here. We've been really glad to collaborate with you on this prize and to host it here. The message, as I said, that the prize transmits is critical for our own pedagogy and the design world more broadly, and so that makes it incredibly important for us to be part of this. It's also keeping this in mind that we've formatted this to do the seminars tomorrow so that all the winners can actually engage with students and teachers and faculty here more deeply on some of these questions, which we hope will then find its way into the pedagogy, and that's really the eventual intent. And I think that's why this interface is such an important one, and thank you for accommodating and being part of this. And so the way we are organizing the seminars tomorrow is that they're going to run in 3 parallel sessions. They all run from noon to 2 p.m. This one session will be in Portico 1, 2, 3. Of course, these details will be with you, which Hsieh will do, which will be moderated by Professor Joyce Rosenthal, who is a professor in the Department of Urban Planning and Design. She's also the co-coordinator of the track that I spoke about earlier, which is on anticipatory spatial practices. And I think this is a really common ground in terms of what that MDes track and that program deals with and your own work. So I think we very much look forward to it. The second session, Doina, with you will be moderated by Andreas Lepik, who is a Loeb Fellow now and was a curator at MoMA. You know his work. And his recent publication, a few days old, as well as the work that he did while he was at MoMA, is around the question of social agency, both in the city and architecture. And he will also be joined by Michael Hooper, who is a professor, again, in the Urban Planning and Design Department. His work is around participation and is a specialist on Africa. And so this will, again, I think, be a very interesting dialogue and an interface for you. And the last one with you, Ken, is interesting because we have 2 professors from the university, Ethan Zuckerman from the Berkman Center for Internet and Society, and Nick O'Malley from the Kennedy School of Government. And so we're really delighted that we could also reach out to the broader university to bring this sort of interface and discuss the questions that you throw up through your work and its relevance both for design but also for governance. And I think it's important for the Kennedy School to be part of this. So thank you very much for doing this, for being here. Congratulations once again, and thank you all for being around and congratulating the winners. Thank you.